All right, everyone, welcome to ForeFlight Basics. So today I will be covering with you a little bit about everything you may need to know when it comes to ForeFlight. By the end of this video, hopefully you are a little bit more enriched on what ForeFlight can and cannot do to help you. With that in mind, today I will be using my ForeFlight, which is the Max Performance Edition of ForeFlight. So if you have the basics, there may be a couple things you'll see today that your edition can't do. But hopefully you'll be able to see what it can and determine whether or not if you want to upgrade. So without further ado, let's get into it. So ForeFlight, across the bottom, you've got all the different tabs: airports, maps, plates, documents, imagery, flights, weight and balance, and more. So we'll just go through it each one at a time, starting at the airports tab. If we go up here to the star with a clock, this is going to pull up all of your favorites. So any airport that you've decided that you really like, maybe it's one you go to a lot, just hit the star button. It'll turn orange, and now it's located in your favorites down at the bottom. So I'm located here in Arlington, Texas. We're going to use Arlington's airport. We've got the info tab with all of our frequencies, including our chart supplement, any nearby airports, and further details. Our weather, pretty straightforward, working through our METAR, our TAVs, our dailies, our winds, and even the MOS. Now the runway tab, this is a good one for, especially for new pilots. Maybe you're still trying to understand the wind. Well, this is a good way to kind of visually see how much crosswind are you going to be dealing with. Probably what runway is that airport going to be using. So definitely utilizing this runway tab will help you out a lot. Let you know how long the runway is, what kind of condition the runway is in, and even the lighting. So for us, if we're looking at runway 34, we know we're going to have PAPIs on the left. Moving over to our procedure tab, we've got our airports. So if we need to see our airport diagram, we've got that right there, and it'll pop immediately over to our plates tab. Opening it up, we've got all of our departures, arrivals, and approaches. Now, if you can see right here on my approach tab, I've got FAA, government charts, and Jeppesen charts. Jeppesen is an added subscription, so if you're wanting to add those JEP charts to your ForeFlight, just know that that's an additional cost that you'll have to incur, but I highly recommend it. Jeppesen charts are just easy to read. They're, as you're seeing right now, aesthetically pleasing. Just makes your life in the air a little bit easier. So going back, you can always finally check any NOTAMs that there may be at your airport. So over to the maps page. Maps page, we'll zoom out a little bit here. So again, we're right here under the Bravo of DFW. It looks crazy, but be here long enough, and it's actually pretty simple. So on the maps page, on this top left, we've got different options of what kind of charts we want to look at. So we have aeronautical, which I highly recommend having highlighted. Have it turned on. So you can see I turned it off, and we just lost kind of that extra glow of where that Bravo is. Really helps you differentiate the airspace versus the rest of the chart. Going down, US VFR sectional, probably most of the time you'll be flying VFR, and that's what you'll use. You've got US IFR low if you're an instrument pilot, and of course if you added that Jeppesen subscription, you've also got your JEP charts as well. Of course, the closer you zoom in, the more detailed it's going to be. But for now, let's stick with our VFR charts. Other things that you can note here, this is just a recommended setup that I would have for you, is aeronautical, UF VFR sectional, use your radar composite. And everything here on the right, you can either turn on or turn off at your will. So I like to have my AirMets, SIGMETs, my NOTAMs, TFRs, and any PIREPs that may be in the general area. So if I turn the PIREPs off, you can see over KDAL, we just lost a little symbol. But if I turn it back on, there he is. And now I can highlight it, tap on it, and find out exactly what that PIREP was. Again, just kind of keeping important information right there at the front, so easily visible, so I can keep track of it and know, again, what's really going on in the air around me. Moving over to your cog wheel, this is your settings for the map page. Again, this is just a recommended setting. You can go through it, turn them on, turn them off how you see fit. So we'll just scroll through this kind of slowly, just kind of let you see it. If you need to pause the video at any point in time, feel free to. With this one, I do highly recommend your glide advisor. Definitely have that one turned on. When you're airborne, once you have your glide settings set up, it will give you a glide ring showing you exactly how far, if you're assuming best glide speed, that you could take this plane to and be able to land safely. So it might be the difference of landing at an airport or maybe landing in an open field. So I highly recommend turn that glide advisor on. Having your breadcrumbs on, also good, as ForeFlight does allow you to track an electronic logbook. Breadcrumbs are a great way to track your actual flights. Again, just working our way through it nice and slow. So those are the recommended settings that I would definitely recommend to any new pilot that I am training, or for anybody that's really just trying to understand the basics of ForeFlight but don't want to be overwhelmed with too much information. So with that, we'll move over to the plates tab again. This is the tab that you would go to if you're opening, let's go back here to our procedure. Maybe we're opening the ILS 34 in Arlington. It's going to take you to the plates tab. The plates tab can do more, and we'll cover that in just a little bit. Of course, you've got your documents tab. Any information that you may need should be in here. I've got a couple extra drives. Again, if you got that Jeppesen subscription, you may end up with a Jeppesen drive. Work your way through it, and don't be afraid to add new binders. As you can see, I've got plenty of binders on my screen. This was for every phase that I was in. So when I was trying to become a brand new private pilot, I would go through and just add information as I would see fit. So for example, if we went to the FAA and we open up this digital terminal procedures chart. Let's say I wanted to add this to one of those folders. I'm just going to hit the plus sign on the folder, and now I can add it to one of those binders, and now I've got quick, easy reference to this chart without having to search for it. Moving over to imagery, a whole lot of good stuff here. A lot of weather charts. You can check precipitation. You can look at your outlooks. You can see what's going on at the surface. And I mean, there's just a lot of good weather information here, so much so that I'm not really going to cover it too much in this video because it's really good, and I highly recommend every pilot just dive into it, really dig deep, find out what's going on, and the more you look at these weather charts, the better you're going to understand weather, and again, it's going to make you a safer pilot in the air. Over to our flights tab. Anytime we send a flight plan from our maps page over to flights, it's going to end up here. So we'll come back to this page in just a minute. We've got weight and balance, very important. If you like doing paper weight and balance, of course I recommend it, especially for new pilots. Really get an understanding of what weight and balance means, knowing how to stay inside of your acceptable envelopes with your aircraft. But ForeFlight also does a great job of helping make this digital. So with that, if you go here, you can add a weight and balance profile. So you can see I've got several weight and balance profiles just because even though most of these are Piper Archers, every single Archer still weighs a little bit different. So that requires a different weight and balance. But with that weight and balance, you can just change the information to whatever you need it to. I'm currently 195. So if I add that, I can change it, and immediately it's going to change some of the information. So let's say I'm going solo. I've got no passenger. Again, you can see up here on the top right how it changed where our takeoff weight was based on the CG envelope for our specific aircraft. And finally, going over to our More tab. More tab is where we can set up, check our downloads. We can look at scratch pads, which is a good one. So scratch pads here, you can get a craft scratch pad, press this little plus sign. There's all sorts of different ones here. I would recommend craft if you're trying to get your instrument rating, or maybe you are instrument rated, and the ATIS as well. That is a good one. This one is your ATIS scratch pad. Makes it a lot easier to be able to just quickly reference what your weather is when you try and pick up that information. Going down, we've got our logbook, our digital logbook here. This is up to you as to whether or not you would like to use a digital logbook. I personally am using it as of now, but what is great about this is once you've got all of your entries put in, you can come down here to the Reports tab, and let's say I was going for my private pilot. I can check my private pilot, and per the FAR 62109 Alpha, anything that is required for me to become a private pilot is now in here, and all the green check marks means I'm just that much closer to getting my license. So going off of that, we're going back to our More tab, still looking down any custom content you may have, and you can of course find out more about your account. You can check your Jeppesen account. If you had one, you could add it. So you can see here on my Jeppesen account, I do have my linked coverage. If I needed to add another account or if I needed to change my coverage, I can do all that right here from that Jeppesen tab. So those are the basics of really every tab that you have available to you here on ForeFlight. So with that in mind, let's go back and let's actually create a flight plan. So back on our Maps tab, pressing the FPL button, we're going to create a route. So let's say we're leaving here from Arlington, KGKY, and we want to go to KLBB. So that is Lubbock. So that's a little bit of a distance. It's out to the west. And now we've got multiple options. We can change our aircraft. We can pick what speed we want to go at. Again, these are performance profiles that are going to be pulled from the manufacturer into ForeFlight. Now, if you have the basic ForeFlight edition, this option here may be limited to what you have available. You may need to actually just kind of build a basic performance profile. I know for the full performance edition, you have these options. So for me, I like to go 65% power econ, just a little bit slower in the air. I'm not trying to get there full throttle. I am trying to get to my destination safely. We have our altitudes, which we can pick. Are we flying VFR? Are we flying IFR? What headings are we going on? So in this case, we'll say we're flying VFR, and of course we're going to the west. So now we've got our recommended altitudes. We'll go ahead and pick 6,500. Any procedures we may need to follow. So our procedure advisor, in case we needed to follow a specific departure, we can now add those from here. Also a route advisor for those of you that are flying instrument. A route advisor is a nice addition to it. So again, if you have the Max Performance Edition, you're going to find the recommended. Right up there at the top, it's going to be probably the most straightforward one. The one that if you were to select it and file, more than likely ATC is not going to amend your clearance. But if you don't have the Max Performance, no big deal. This tab doesn't really affect you much. You'll come down here to all of your ATC cleared. So we know the King 3 to Lubbock was cleared yesterday. It's only been cleared 12 times total, but it seems to kind of be the one that was most cleared. So we'll go ahead and select that route, and now automatically it's updated our route. So if we zoom out, we can see that it's added that King 3 departure. And we can also add our estimated time of departure. And for this scenario, we'll say that we're going to leave at 4:30. So now I've got my entire flight plan set up. I need to send it over to my Flights tab. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to hit this box with the arrow coming out of it. I'm going to send it over to Flights. So now it's going to pop up all the information here, and I can scroll down, check my estimated time of departure. I can make sure I'm leaving Arlington, I'm arriving at Lubbock. If I needed an alternate, just tap the alternate. It'll retrieve any nearby alternates that you may have available to you. In our case, again, around Lubbock. And if we needed to add one to it, all you have to do is just click on it, and we'll add Hale County. Now we've got an alternate listed. Again, we're looking at VFR, so we want to make sure our flight rules are appropriate. We're going to run the King 3 Lubbock. We're going to go at a cruise altitude of 6,500. Are you flying by yourself, or are you flying with a passenger? If you are, update accordingly. 1, 2, 3 people, find their average weight, add the cargo, and now you have a total payload. Remember, your payload is people plus cargo. That is your payload. You've got your fuel policy, so you can take off with minimum fuel required, or you can just go full tanks. Where I fly out of, we use full tanks almost every time we depart, so we love to use full tanks. That's just extra peace of mind while you're in the air. Moving your way down, you can see all the rest of it, any destination services you may have. And finally, you can pack your flight. So what packing your flight does is, if you don't have any reception while you're in the air, it packs up all the vital information that you need. You can now get airborne, you can fly to your destination. Let's say you don't have service, and you're still going to have that information readily available to you because you packed it up. Think packing your bags for vacation, but now we're packing our ForeFlight to go on our vacation, right? So another great option here on this page, this is going to be for you performance users, those top of the line ForeFlight users. On departure, you'll see the word takeoff. Go ahead and click that button, and you can come down and you'll get all the weather that you need, what runway we're using, what the usable length is. Here's our weather, wind direction, speed, temperature, our aircraft takeoff weight, and at the bottom, this is the best part. This is your performance. So in this case, we're looking at a liftoff speed of 57, a ground roll of 1,024 feet. Our 50-foot speed would be 63 knots, and our total distance of 1779. But what if you're in a check ride and an examiner wants to give you different weather to see if you can change your performance accordingly? If you're a max performance user, this is going to be a lot easier for you. So simply just go here to the weather. Let's say instead of 190, the winds are now going to be 340. We'll click off of it, hit close, and immediately ForeFlight's going to let you know, hey, that wind is now on a more favorable runway. Do you want to update? Yes, congratulations, you just showed your examiner that you realize you need to change runways. Wind speed, we'll say, is 21 knots, so we got some good wind today. It's not 31 Celsius anymore, now it's 4 Celsius. And our altimeter, we'll say instead of 29.90, we'll say it's 30.00. Hit close and come back down, and you can see our total distance. It went down from, I believe it was 1,600 all the way down to 1,200. And instantly, right there within a couple minutes, if that, you just showed your examiner that you can change the performance profiles. You know exactly what your aircraft is capable of and what's going to happen. Now, I fly an Archer, so with that, on my aircraft configuration, if I wanted to do a short field takeoff, I would go flaps 25, and again, immediately it's going to update those performance numbers for me. So max ForeFlight users, those performance ForeFlight guys and gals, use that takeoff button. It'll be a lot easier. Again, if you're basic ForeFlight, that's okay. You'll just have to utilize those POH charts and run those numbers accordingly. But if you're going for a check ride, this is an easy way to help you avoid what could be a simple bust. All right, so now that we've covered those takeoff performances on your departure, let's go into the rest of it. So you're still here in the Flights tab. We need to get our weather briefing. A ForeFlight weather briefing does count as a weather briefing. So especially if you're a new pilot and you've got ForeFlight, I highly recommend go ahead and pull this briefing up, but still call your weather briefer. That way, as you're going through that weather brief with an actual briefer, you can follow along in your ForeFlight, see what it is they're talking about, and if you have any additional questions, weather briefers love to help answer those questions. Again, remember that briefer is there for you. So now we've got our weather briefing. If we hit that little stack, it'll load up everything here on the left of our briefing summary. Anything with orange dots means it is unread. Again, for those of you that are going for a check ride and your examiner wants you to get a weather briefing, you want to make sure that you have 0 unread sections. Otherwise, you may have to explain why you did not get a weather briefing. So let's get into it. So we've got our TFRs. We're looking around. We're seeing, does any of these TFRs impact our route? We're going over, we've got our NOTAMs, we've got any air mets, we've got our synopsis, with this synopsis, you've got the surface analysis chart. Just tap on it and you'll be able to zoom in, be able to see what's really going on, explain to your examiner or maybe explain to your co-pilot what kind of weather you can expect along your route. Moving over to the METAR. Now on this tab, the METARs are always fun to read. This is a good practice page, especially if you're a new private pilot trying to understand what it is you're reading. So try and read that METAR how it is, but if you're struggling, there's this button right here called plain text. Turn that on and it decodes that METAR for you, making it a lot easier to read. Now again, if you're going in on a check ride, probably leave that off, but if your examiner says, hey, you can turn it on, by all means, make your check ride easier, turn that plain text on, and just read that METAR. Moving over to any PIREPs, cloud coverage, surface winds, our TAFs, again, we've got that plain text option. But again, make sure you keep it off at first. Try and learn how it is with our standard type outs. But if you need that plain text, that option is available for you. We've got our wind charts, vertical cross, winds aloft, any NOTAMs that may affect our route. And once you get past all these NOTAMs, congratulations, you're back to the beginning. We hit our stack and we now have 0 unread sections. So that is the briefing right here on the flights tab. Now going from that, we need to talk about our nav log. Our nav log is everything, every turn, every heading, every course, wind direction, any vital information for you working our way through this flight. So if we can see up here at the top, we've got our route, we've got which plane we're in, we've got even our power setting, estimated time en route, what our distance is, what our average winds are going to look like. For those of you looking at instrument, here's your rain check. That makes it easy to know if you're going to have rain or if you may have any issues with rain across your route. So one thing to keep in mind on this tab is anything in bold black. These are metrics that you have control of. So takeoff weight, obviously that's something you can control. Estimated time of departure, controlled. Now your estimated time en route, if I told you you can actually control that, would you believe me? The answer is yes, right? So if we go back to our maps page, remember we picked the Kingdom 3 to Lubbock route. That estimated time en route would change if we didn't take that departure. So anything in bold black, these are metrics that you can change. So that is your nav log there. So going from our nav log, we've got our weather briefing. Now we need to be able to get this imported back to our plates tab. If you remember this tab, I said we would come back to it later. Well, here we are. So in our plates tab, you've got this import button. You've got two options here. You can import it from the maps or you can import it from your flights tab. If you're importing from the flights tab, it's whatever the most recent flight was. And if you're importing from maps, it's whatever you currently have. So let me show you what that looks like. So if I clear this out, we've got Arlington, KGKY, and we'll go to Midway, KJWY. So close our screen, let's go back to our maps page, and if I hit import, we can now see that the maps tab shows that KJWY and our flights tab shows Lubbock. So let's import from flights. So we've got KGKY, Arlington as our departure airport. We've got our airport diagram. We've got the Kingdom 3 departure, which we chose. And we have any approach charts. Going into Lubbock, if we needed any alternate minimums, our arrival charts, those would be here. If we wanted to pick a specific approach, we can go through, pull all of our approaches here. Now what's great about this one is there's a button next to it. So let's say I wanted to fly the ILS 17. If I hit that check mark, I can now move on, go back to maybe Arlington, and now it's time for me to hit that approach. If I tap approach, it's going to immediately take me to 17 right for the ILS, as opposed to having to go through this entire list. And of course, you've got Lubbock's airport diagram. So that is your plates tab. Very useful, keeps all your information right here on a single page, and you don't have to worry about trying to go back to your maps, maybe go back to your airport page to pull those appropriate procedures. It's just right here waiting for you to use it. All right, so talking about our flight planning, we also need to talk about a couple extra tips that I can give you in our flight plan today to help make it easier for you to navigate. One of those things I'm going to show you is called a custom waypoint. So in order to do a custom waypoint, let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to remove the Kingdom 3 departure, and we're still going to go from Arlington to Lubbock. Let's zoom in and let's give ourselves a waypoint down here. Let's go towards Lillian. Now here, I can either insert this point into the route just by tapping the button, or if I get rid of it, if I click on more, I can hit save, and now I can change the name here to whatever I want to change it to. In this case, I'm going to call it Lillian. Now, please note that saving a custom waypoint is another performance feature. So if you've got a lower tier edition of ForeFlight, you will not be able to save custom waypoints. As you can see, I've saved Lillian, and now I can drag my dot over to it. We can see Lillian pops up as a yellow diamond. I'll tap it, and now my point up in my nav log is saved as Lillian. You can see some other ones that I've made. I made one for the tip of the Delta. This is Joe Pool Lake, named it as tip of Joe Pool. And all of these points will stay here unless you come over to our drop-down section and click on User Waypoints at the bottom. It will then hide all of your user waypoints so you can still use them for future use. So now we've got our custom waypoint named and we're saved. So let's continue on. Let's go to Lake Alvarado. Again, we're going to click the yellow diamond and we'll work our way over to Cleburne. And we will overfly Cleburne. So now we've covered naming custom waypoints. Let's talk about adding tops of climbs. So if we are on our way out of the Bravo, we know our Bravo shelf near Arlington is 3,000, and as it comes out is 4,000. So I'm actually going to add one more waypoint here. We're going to add the Delta waypoint. So now, how do we add multiple tops of climbs? This is a really simple maneuver. So click on your waypoint, go to More, hit Set Altitude, and now you can set your altitude. So now with the Delta, we'll start at 2,500 feet, click Done, and come out. And now we can see that Delta up at the top says flight level 025 for 2,500. Lillian will do the same thing. We'll come out, we'll hit More. We'll go to Set Altitude. We'll click 3,500 and hit Done. And come back out to the map. And we can see Lillian now shows flight level 035. Lake Alvarado, we'll still leave that one alone. And Cleburne, we're going to overfly it on our way out towards Lubbock. So again, we'll hit More. We'll hit Set Altitude. And we'll go up to 6,500. Hit Done. And close it out. So what we've just done is added multiple tops of climbs to our flight plan. So now if I go over to my profile view, I can see using this side picture that I'm underneath the Bravo and I'm showing multiple tops of climbs up towards my cruising altitude to get me all the way to Lubbock Airport. So this is an easy way to be able to add multiple tops of climbs to your flight plan. It also shows an examiner, for example, if you're in a check ride, that you are aware of the airspace around you and how you personally are going to navigate around this airspace. Again, I'll show you one more time using Lillian as our waypoint. We'll tap our waypoint, we'll go to More, we'll hit Set Altitude, and then we'll type in whichever altitude we would like to go to right there. So that is adding custom waypoints as well as adding multiple tops of climbs. So one more thing I would like to show you before we move forward from this point. We've now got our route from Arlington to Lubbock. We've got our custom waypoints. We've got our saved altitudes. So let's see what that looks like on the actual navlog page. So we're going to hit our box. We're going to send this over to flights, and we're going to now tap our navlog. As you can see, over here, our navlog now shows the appropriate altitudes for our multiple tops of climbs. Please note that even if we have a custom saved waypoint, like we do for the Delta, for Lillian, for Lake Alvarado, please note that even though you have your custom names saved for your waypoints, those names will not transfer over to navlog. It will instead just still be the regular waypoints as if you didn't name it. Those names on the maps page are for your use only. One more thing I wanted to show you here on the maps page is how to make your approach into another airport easier. So let's say we're going to Midway. So if we go up here and we hit the procedure button, we hit traffic pattern, we're going to find out which runway has the better winds. Now, Midway is a non-towered airport, so they're going to be on a CTAF, so probably they're going to be on runway 18. So now on here, we now know we can pick an option. We need to pick the one that makes the most sense. So we could cross midfield and go direct, or we cross midfield and make a teardrop, whichever your choice is. We did a 45, that just looks messy, doesn't make any sense, right? So we're gonna pick cross midfield, do a teardrop. And down here at the bottom, we're gonna hit add to route. So now it's immediately dropped on here. It gives you turn-by-turn navigation on how to get you to cross midfield, how to follow that teardrop in, what your pattern altitude is at, and now you can just follow it in all the way down to the runway, land, go get yourself a nice lunch, and not have to worry about a thing. It's just a fun little procedure here that you can do. Again, I'll show you one more time. So we're going KGKY to KJWY. We're going to hit procedure, traffic pattern, in this case runway 18, cross midfield teardrop, because we love to do that teardrop, stay safe, hit add to route, and now we can come down here, zoom in, and there it is, turn-by-turn navigation right there, landing 18 at Midway. So with that in mind, I think that will be most of everything that we can cover here with you today to get you through the basics of ForeFlight. I hope this helped. Hope you learned some new things today, maybe picked up a few more nuggets of information that maybe you didn't have. And good luck to you in all your flight endeavors out there, and stay safe.